CIO News. I am Afreen Khan, your host for the broadcast and head of operations at CIO News. This is our exclusive fireside chat powered by Avaya on transformation through customer experience. This is a recorded session and will be available on our website, cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. Very excited to invite my guest for today, Mr. Varadharajan Ragunathan. He is the head of monetization and customer engagement at Big Basket. With an experience of over 20 years, Vardharajan is passionate about innovation at the intersection of behavioral psychology and technology. He has proven abilities in building sustainable and profitable businesses built on innovation and high performance teams, and is passionate about public markets investing as well. Welcome, sir. Great. I also have along with me Mr. Bhavish Vora, who is the sales engineering leader at Avaya. Bhavish is a dynamic and result-oriented professional with progressive leadership experience in enterprise telecom and IT industry. 20 plus years of working experience in various roles, started career as service engineer with Tata Telecom Limited, a leading communication equipment solutions provider. Welcome, Bhavish.
Good evening. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Great. So let's just dive in. And Mr. Ragunathan, my question to you on,
Hmm.
of course, transformation through customer experience as we are discussing this topic. We know for a fact that customer experience now is based mostly on technology. And we have seen a rise and a surge in the technology adoption also in the last couple of years, particularly. So, with the current growth in technology, how important do you think is it to migrate to the cloud? And what factors would you consider while migrating to cloud?
Sure, I think given what's happened thanks to COVID, an omni-channel sort of experience, which is essentially offline serving as a backup to online and online serving as a backup to offline, I think it's of course already sort of proven to be an imperative for pretty much anyone and everyone, right? So I think given that, right, and now thanks to the macro headwinds that everyone is facing in the last 12 odd months or so, that Fed has started tightening interest rates on. I think more and more organizations are thinking of three things. One, how do I deliver a superior omni-channel experience? Two, how do I make my entire customer interaction and engagement sort of seamless, much like what Apple does across its devices? And three, what are my core competencies? And how do I sort of focus on the ones that I think I have an advantage, right? Clearly, right? Cloud isn't going to be a core competency for a lot of folks, simply because I think given a choice between, let's say, having a better e-commerce website versus managing all of your backend infrastructure, including your servers, your compute, your data lakes, etc., most organizations, I suspect, will prompt for the former, right? So I think the right way I would probably reframe this question is what sort of nuances you ought to be looking at, both for long term as well as short term in terms of trade offs before you do a migration to a cloud. Should this be a public cloud? Should this be a private cloud? If this is a hybrid, what parts of it need to be sort of completely ring fenced? What parts of it need like a dual backup? What parts of it do you need complete control over, and so on and so forth? So I think the cloud question is long past gone. I think in the newer, braver world, I think the right sort of framing is what layers and what nuances can you see when you choose a cloud.
True that. So I think yes, a very appropriate point you meant there that it's not just about just migrating, it's about the short term goals, it's about the long term goals. What criticality are you actually going to consider, and what are you actually looking to benefit from cloud? So it's
Yeah.
not just about migration. There are a lot of factors. True, and you also spoke something about delivering experience, an omni-channel experience. So on that note, Bhavish, I'd pass on the baton to you.
So I think that's very interesting. Big Basket is a very household name now. Name. I think we all are customers of Big Basket in some form or the other. And one of the first companies, to start this grocery home business very long time ago. Now the market is flooded with it. And it's all about how quickly you can deliver and which is the cheapest discount available. So I know my wife is a very big fan of Big Basket and other. She looks at the cheapest. I think because at the end of the day, products are going to be the same, But as Raghunath said, it's all about the experience. Who's able to provide a consistent omni-channel experience, right? Because this is something I'm ordering probably daily or multiple times a week, right? So who can
Hmm.
deliver consistently is what is going to be the clear differentiator. So I
Absolutely.
think I will, yeah. So I think cloud is a given. I think what Raghu says is fine. I think most customers, even we speak to, they say that, yeah, it's not about whether we'll move to cloud, but what are the challenges we will face? We have to overcome, but we have to move to cloud. I want to take the question to the next level. I think, and I think Big Basket is like a pure digital first company. I don't think I'm not sure it has an offline business. I don't know. Maybe you
We
can
do
elaborate.
now. Now that's why I
Now you
said I
have.
think we've started
Ah,
opening offline stores right now
okay.
because whatever we do in the top eight cities, it's
Hmm.
still never going to be enough to build a presence outside of it. Even in the top eight cities, for areas that are sort of suburban, we've now chosen to go with the express sort of model, the 7-Eleven sort of model, where let's say it's close to an Andheri station, you can just hop by, pick up some fresh fruits and vegetables, and whatever you need. Sort of
Okay.
like a limited assortment, sort of like how both a bank branch as well as a ATM as well as net banking coexist, right? So I think that's probably the
Yes.
loosest sort of analogy that I can
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
of, right? Whatever you do, you still probably need an ATM, even after UPI. I suspect the
Yes.
frequency of withdrawals and the amount has gone down,
Gone
but
down.
people still do like a 5K, 10K per month, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I think that's the habit because we still do a supermarket visit couple of
Yeah.
times, even though most of the big stuff is done. Yeah. Okay. So I think the question is more, I think, taking your omni-channel experience, the point which you raised. I mean, and since you all are digital native, what is the role of, digital channels while you're with the entire business on digital in the area of customer service? I mean, like say you're ordering through the mobile app or the website, things come, but if things break, do customers call or they use the mobile app, or, they use chat, they go to social
I
media.
think
Is
more
there a
and more
strategy
people,
around it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, more and more people now don't want to call. I think,
Hmm.
the age of calling, dialing a bunch of numbers, waiting for somebody to talk to you, I think that's over and done. In fact, I think we started doing bots 4 or 5 years back. I think now we've gotten
Hmm.
to a stage where we pretty much have given bots the leeway and the rules and the framework to resolve 95% of the queries. In any case, in groceries, it's fairly simple. My
Hmm.
onions were delivered, but they were not up to the mark. So the bot just says, "Hey, don't worry about it. We just give you a refund straight off the bat." Right. So I think you know broadly in terms of trends, I think what
Hmm.
customers want is to minimize the number of interactions that they have to resolve a query. Right? I think gone are the days of someone, a credit card company would say, send me a copy of your charge slip, send me another card or whatever, right? Give me proof that you didn't do this transaction or show me proof that, this card wasn't used, etc., etc. I think essentially now more and more customers are saying, hey, I just want a one-click
Hmm.
resolution. I don't want endless follow ups. I don't want loops to go on. I'm happy to trade off some of this if it even means inferior value because people have started sort of valuing their time, right? And that's the shift that we've sort of migrated towards. Just look at it from the prism of what is best from a short-term convenience and long-term value for the customer. If someone's complaining about onions, just give them a no questions asked refund. Right? So of course, the data analytics team would come back and say that means 100,000 customers are going to misuse this to claim refunds for onions that they using, right? So, the real nuance to that is supposing you chose not to do it, you probably would have to build a layer of people who would call you, ask you for photos of your onions, to take a call as to whether to do it or not. I suspect for a 20 rupee onion, the sheer management layer that you have to build to resolve that query would
Yeah.
probably be worth 200 bucks, right? On top of it, you have customer issues, customers may feel irritated, etc., to deal with, right? So I think it's a no-brainer, right? So I think looking through first degree effects, second degree effects, first degree counter effects, second degree counter effects, and then taking a holistic call is really the best way to do it. I suspect for an onion, this is the easy answer. For a mobile phone, the answer is exactly the opposite for obvious reasons, right? So I think you really have to look at it from that prism, or a more sort of A nuanced answer would be if this is a customer who's been buying long from Big Basket as at least 4 transactions, just
mm,
make it no questions asked. He's not going to fail. But if it is a customer who's doing this for the first time, you certainly want an intervention because one, if this is a fraud, then I suspect you want to plug him straight away. If he is not a fraud, you want to make sure he gets a great customer experience the first time. Right? You see where I'm going with this. As we spoke, we unraveled 2 layers. Should this be different for loyal and repeat customers versus new customers? And should this be different for different items? Should this be different for different points of time during the day, during the year? Right? Tomorrow, if it is, for example, Ganesh Chaturthi, I suspect we may not even want to do this because there'll be so much surge in traffic. We
mm,
may just say we'll just live with this because it's going to be a NPS accretive thing,
mm.
and so on and so forth. So you just have to look at this from various angles, including and first and foremost from the prism of a customer before you take a call.
So got it. So I think that's I think you say that the pain of providing a customer service strategy, maybe is too costly or maybe prohibitively high compared to just giving a replacement for a very very low value item, which is good. So I mean, so just one more follow up question before I hand it over back to Afreen. So customers, they just use the chat channel on your mobile app, or they
Yeah,
really go to
they
social
do.
media? The chat is the
Social
predominant
media,
digital
I
channel.
think
Yeah.
people do, I think, but the more serious customers typically just tend to get it resolved through the chat channel because they are the
Mm,
ones who value that. I think customers who are a little more irritated, perhaps it's a bigger issue,
mm,
tend to sort of vent out on social media. So we have a separate team that tracks that.
mm,
And typically, I think that's where the point of escalation comes from. I think most customers would probably went out on social media if you went back to them with a loop couple of times on the initial resolution, right? So, which is why, at least in groceries, or I suspect for a lot of small ticket size sort of items,
mm,
the more the number of resolutions that you can do straight off the bat the first time around, the better it is for the long term health of your business.
mm,
I suspect this answer may not be the same for an insurance company. Right? Obviously,
mm.
they deal with much higher ticket sizes. I
Correct.
suspect if it is, for example, a difficult claim, it transcends the borderline between a fraud versus a very difficult to sort of assess claim. And we are talking about ticket sizes that are crores. So it's going to be a different ball game altogether. But I think for consumables, everyday items, and smaller ticket size items, I think a good sort of mental model would be how much can you process straight through.
Thank you. I think good insights. Yes, Afreen, over to you. You want to say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Bhavish. In fact, Mr. Ragunathan, you actually spoke about that. Yes, we are in the age where customers are looking for a one-click solution, and particularly, Big Basket being in the B2C industry, where the issue of a customer spending 20 rupees would be the same, and the irritation level would almost be the same to someone who's spending 2,000 rupees. So, but you still have to deliver experience to both of them. So in an organization that is so it's about the customers. How do you measure customer experience, and probably if you have any tips how customer experience can be enhanced using technology, what are your thoughts?
I think, I am probably a little more sort of old school. I think I don't believe in these NPS surveys because I think a lot of the NPS essentially is a function of how you frame the questions, right? There are only
Mm,
two holy truths in any business, which is number of new customers who come in organically. When I say organically, word of mouth. Bhavish goes and says, tells this to a neighbor just chooses to, download Big Basket app without us spending on SEO or, SEC or
Hmm.
whatever, right? So, and the average ticket size per transaction, right? I think if you're doing a good job of customer service on the delivery and post facto delivery, the average ticket size goes up, right? Which, in some sense, with a lag, starts catching up on the new customer acquisition as well. So it's really that sort of simple business model that I think the way we tend to think of it is we think we've divided marketing into acquisition and engagement. The engagement team owns everything that is post ordering. Right? And they're responsible for the delivery matrices, on-time delivery matrices, how many issues happen at the time of delivery, the post-delivery follow-ups, the nudges, notifications saying you got a great deal, you have a great discount that you can use, etc., etc. And the acquisition team is responsible for widening the funnel, which is, we keep talking to customers, we remarket to them, etc., etc. So to me, I think both of this have to work in unison. For I suspect a great company like an Apple, right? If you just look at it over a 15-year time frame, you probably had only an iPhone then, right? Now I suspect most people have an iPhone, a MacBook, and then they're probably paying for iTunes subscription, Apple Pay, extended warranty, etc., etc. So if you really look at it as a share of wallet, right, I suspect they sort of gone from $400 to let's say $2,000 if you're a hardcore Apple fanatic, right? And more people are buying Apple. That's all, right? So it's a very sort of simple, metric, right? What it takes, because lots of times people get lost in these internal metrics, is saying we've improved the breadth of assortment, right? That's like a car maker saying we have 20 models, but what use of our 20 models, right? If 19 of them don't sell well, right? So I think it's very important to stay customer forward rather than business backward, right? And a lot of answers just become obvious then.
Yes, and when you talk about being customer forward, I think technology plays a very, very important role, as you mentioned that yes, it is about understanding. And on that note, Bhavish, would you like to take it up?
Yeah, I think very good inputs from Vardha for the measurement of the customer experience aspect. I think because I think in every transaction, if everybody wants to do a survey, I think a customer is really hassled. I mean, if I
Correct.
order a Swiggy, then I'm going to order, say, a big basket. How many surveys I'm going to do in a day? I mean, even if I call Airtel, so they also want a survey. If it was a call resolved or no,
Yeah.
everything. So I think there's a limit
Actually, it was David
to.
Ogilvy
Yeah.
who said that customers don't say what they feel, don't
Mm,
do what they say, and whatever,
mm.
etc., etc.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
apologies. So, but you get the drift of it. I think lots of times you are giving a survey. You may not say the right thing because you want to be politically correct, or you don't want to
mm,
say the wrong things to a nice person, right? So I think and essentially surveys get limited by the imagination of the person who created the survey, which often is not the chief executive of the company.
correct, correct. I think that's valid. I just want to add one more point on this CX part. Before I ask my question, uh, I think one thing I have learned. I think doing auditing in my previous company also is. Uh, Very very famous hotel brand. They used to say, for us it is more important to find out what customers dislike rather than what they like. So because I want to remove those irritants from his experience, because especially when there is a recurring, it's not like a one time experience, right? Working with big basket. So I mean, and for that is why they say, we try to find out what customers did not like. What is it, certain things that we are overdoing, or we should not be doing. I'm not talking about measuring CX, but do you actually have a strategy to really differentiate, get custom, because you have maximum customer insights, I'm sure you have maximum number of customer bases. How do you really use that information? Do you have tools
So
to
yeah, a lot
measure
of
it,
this
or it is
is
just revenue? Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of it is essentially agile experimentation, right? So if, for example, now we've started to we started surfacing a feature saying in grocery nobody wants to remember the full list of items, so we introduced something called a smart basket, which just allows you
Mm,
to shop off the previous list that you had shopped off, right? And inside the answer is partly yes. How did this get converted into a feature? Through agile experimentation, right? So for example, I think we realized that most people get stuck about what extra items to buy, not at the beginning of the journey, but midway during the journey,
mm,
right? It's a micro insight that because people usually have a felt need to buy, let's say, onions and oil, right? Then midway through this, they say, hey, what was the deodorant that I bought the last time? So surfacing a smart basket midway through the journey or just before checkout is
mm.
far more useful than opening up with a smart basket,
Yes.
right? If we didn't sort of realize it, so we experimented, we found, right? Similarly, I think people often are actually visualizing a full meal, the way it looks on a tawa or in a casserole. They're not thinking of individual items. For example, you want to have roti and palak paneer. So there's so much to the ways in which I can ask you to buy paneer. You're actually not buying paneer. You want to make palak paneer and you want all the ingredients for it. right? So, for example, we're now tinkering around with a large language model to see how, if you type out a recipe, I can assemble the full list of items that go into the
Mm.
recipe. But then I'll also pass you. It's too premature to get excited because people don't want to buy the full list of items. I suspect you already have mustard and salt and aspirita in your house, right? No one's going to buy it for palak paneer. So we have now nuanced it again, saying the items that are essential to that
Mm.
and large ticket size are the ones that I will recommend, because otherwise it becomes an overload. Who does not have salt and aspirita in their house,
Yeah.
or mustard oil or oil, right? So if you want palak paneer, I suspect what you need right now is the palak paneer masala, the paneer, right, and maybe a couple of things for the gravy, right? So that's what it does, but it sort of forewarns you, saying if there is something else, please add the list of supplementary items. So what should
Mm.
have been a long list of 20 items has now become a more manageable list of 3 items with a supplementary list saying, in case you are the types who tends to forget, here is also salt, mustard, etc., etc. You typically have this, but you can choose to buy it. So that becomes a nicer sort of customer experience, right? So these are just sort of two
Yeah.
examples, that I can, think of. I think if you start holding a customer in your mind persistently and have an infinite loop about how you can make the customer feel happier, a lot of these things become great joy to you,
Mm.
because you typically will get one iteration. Like most people who are striving, you will not be satisfied with the first iteration. You will say, hey, there's something jarring in it. What can I do to improve this? Right? So, and so on and so forth, right? And that's really how these things get improvised over a long period of time.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that input. So, Vardha, I want to add the next question. I think probably the last one. Tech companies, you call yourself probably a tech company, even though you're food delivery, but a lot of, you have a lot of tons of data,
Hmm.
customer preferences, what they've been ordering over years. So, and I'm sure you're using some kind of AI, ML analytics platform to give differential treatment to all your customers,
Yeah.
timing, what time they order. As you rightly said, what was our previous order? Based on that, what do you feel he's going to order?
Yep.
Are you using some kind of AI ML technologies? Like the new ones with the generative AI. Is it all in house or homegrown build, or you have outsourced? You have bought some technology from outside? If you can share some of your use
Yeah, sure.
cases, around that, that'll be very
I think
interesting for our audience.
we've obviously built our own data lake. We've
Hmm.
used Snowflake on top of the AWS, right? I think
Okay.
as far as generative AI goes, we are using it, but it's still at an experimentative
Hmm.
stage. I think we think, for example, generative AI will be far more useful if there is a way to ring fence our data very tightly. More importantly, train it on the important things that matter only to us, right? I think the way I think about it is the generative AI right now is at a stage where, which is the equivalent of a Miss Universe translator, right? When you have this Miss Universe sort of contest, you have a translator who typically knows law 70% of 10 languages,
Hmm.
but they don't know 95% of one language. They'd probably be able to say, hey, good afternoon, whatever, etc., etc. I want to do something for the world across 10 languages. But what most businesses need is an extremely deep translator,
Hmm.
right? Because I'm only interested in grocery. I couldn't care any less if, for example, this LLM had a view on how do you improve mobile phone sales, right? So I would rather that you have a large language model on which we can train our specific sensitive data, and it gives me an input that is extremely nuanced, because the inputs that we get, rather the outputs that we get from generative AI right now, still need at least 3-4 loops of human intervention. It is like a noob's cooking, right? So it's just so untextured. You might as well cook it yourself, if you know what I mean, right? If you've been a
Hmm.
bad cook, you would probably know. Paneer is not half baked. There isn't enough simmering, etc., etc. That at one point you just say, instead of improving on this dish, I might as well just make the dish myself, right? I think what we need really for businesses to take this up is a layer of applications where someone says, hey, I am only focused on marketing services, so I will take all your marketing creatives, right? Make this a mid journey plus plus, and give you a very nuanced creative based on the 10 creatives that you've shown me that your brand has used, right? Like for example, we will have our own guidelines say about where we use the logo, what should be the size of the logo, etc., etc., which are hard constraints.
Mm,
I don't think AI is still in a space where it can do this,
mm,
right? It's the equivalent of for lack of a better word, it's the equivalent of a cricketing manual versus a coach. If you're a sophisticated player, you don't need a cricket manual. You want perspectives, not rule books, right? So you don't need somebody to tell you how to play the off drive, right? You probably want somebody to say your leg is just moving a little way too much. Control that movement. That's a very nuanced insight, right? I think we will get there, but I think like most hype cycles, this is way too much hype based on the reality. This will correct. So when you
mm.
have the next layer of industry specific, vertical specific sort of applications that get built up, this will automatically, become a much better place.
I think thanks for those insights, Vardha. I think
Sure.
that's all from my side. Afreen, over to you.
Yes, I'm really picking up that one that, AI is just, it's like a cricketing manual as
Mm,
against a coach. I think it's a very, very interesting perspective and makes sense, particularly because ultimately, it varies from person to person and customer to customer, and also the state of mind that people are in when they're trying to buy something, or, the situations also. So, very interesting point there. And Mr. Ragunathan, thank you so much for your inputs. Any last words or closing words for our viewers?
Nothing really. I think as long as you keep a experimentative sort of mindset and continue to learn and evolve, I think most things that just look like science fiction eventually become reality, right? And for the record, I always keep thinking, AI itself is only 6 months old. I think
mm.
ChatGPT got released what in November, right? The
November.
problem is, I think human mind tends to overestimate what we can achieve in the short term and underestimate what we can achieve in the long term. So as long as you sort of able to keep that focus on the long term in mind and not get disappointed and continue to sort of experiment and evolve, I'm sure 2 years down the line we'll probably be talking about a far improved sort of version of AI that all of us are used to.
Yes, yes. Great. Thank you so much. Bhavish, anything would you like to add?
No, I think I have personally got some good insights. If you see the way Vardha touched upon cloud, he touched upon customer experience, and the last point on AI, I think I mean, a lot of people are claiming, we are doing with AI because it looks good, we are experimenting. But what is the reality? And I think he's given a perfect synonym, like what is it? What a teacher can do for you is different than what a textbook can do, right? Like what coach
Correct.
will actually point out, and that will always require human intervention. That's very much true, whether it is ordering or customer service or anything. So I think very, very useful insights. Thank you.
Great, great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was really nice talking to both of you, and it was a wonderful session. Thank you.